One, we'll call the meeting to order this morning at 9:01 a.m. Thank you for joining us this morning. I just want to say a couple things off the top. Congratulations to Premier Smith and the UCP on their victory in the provincial election earlier this week. Congratulations to all those who let their names stand. It's a big commitment. You're putting yourself out there in a vulnerable position, and you're looking to serve the greater good to try and better our province. So thank you to all those who let their names stand. Locally, congratulations to Grant Hunter, Joseph Scow, Nathan Newdorf, and Shannon Phillips, the MLAs that we cross paths with on the most regular basis. Again, just congratulations and thank you for stepping up. We have a couple of time commitments today on our agenda. We have a 9:30 a.m. delegation with the Green Acres Foundation, and we have a 10 a.m. public hearing. With that, we can move into our agenda. Item B, the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to be made to the agenda? Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we move the adoption of the agenda for our council meeting today, May 18th.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved the adoption of the agenda of the Thursday, June 1st County Council meeting agenda. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Adoption of the minutes. Item C1, County Council meeting minutes from May 18th, 2023. Are there any errors, omissions, any issues arising from the minutes? Claus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move the minutes from May 18th as presented.
Okay, thank you. Claus has moved to adopt the County Council meeting minutes from May 18th, 2023. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I should have noted off the top too, Councillor Van Essen is traveling away with his family right now, so wish him safe travels on his trip south. We can continue moving down, and why don't we move down to subdivision applications. F1, subdivision application number 2023-0-044, Green Life Farms Limited. And with that, I will turn it over to our Supervisor of Planning and Development, Hillary Jansen. Hillary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Council. We do have 4 subdivisions to go through today. So the first one being subdivision application 2023-0-044. This is an application to subdivide out and reconfigure adjacent parcels to allow for a 10.34 acres title out of a 152.56 acre quarter section, and it is located at just off of Township Road 11-0, just to the east of Highway 845 and 519. This application does require some consideration of the merits of the proposal because there is a confined feeding operation on the quarter section in that it's coming out of. And with that, I will pass it off to Steve for the planning comments and the recommendation. 4-4.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Steve.
Morning, Chair. Yeah, this application in front of you is to subdivide out an existing recently established yard area on the east perimeter of the quarter section where they started a yard with a recently constructed a dwelling, so it doesn't show up in your air photo yet. But it's in the area here that Hillary pulled up with that crosshatch at the top of the flatland there above the coulee. They've established a yard up there and have constructed a dwelling. So they're looking to subdivide out that area with the yard, the dwelling, and the septic field that's up there. Due to the location of the yard, established there kind of for two reasons. One, probably three actually. One for the view of the river valley. Second, just to be on the more poor land and not on the better agricultural land that's there in the quarter section. But the third and I guess most important reason being is that was just to be set back outside the required minimum distance separation to the confined feeding operation there that you see in the northwest, which is their own operation, and to meet that applicable MDS distance. So with the residents there, they're looking to separate the private residence from the business and keep the CFO separate from their yard personal title. So as you can see in the photo there, as part of this proposal, they take access off the north road. And there's a private driveway access that comes in, kind of straddles along the quarter section line there. You can see a curve there that comes into the yard area. So part of the proposal involves to have that direct legal and physical road access is that they would be physically touching the north end, capturing that driveway to come down. And then the parcel widens out to capture there were kind of curves type of thing. So that'll all be part of the parcel. So it's not county road or anything like that. It's part of their own private driveway access, and the parcel is touching the road there. So by doing that, this would be the first subdivision out of the quarter section, but the parcel as proposed slightly exceeds the 10-acre maximum. It's a 10.34 acre parcel. So we need a waiver because it's over the 10 acres by the subdivision authority if you're approving it. One of the things you can look at in that consideration is that part of the reason it is over is because of capturing that access road, which is roughly comprised of 0.94 acres, or almost 1 acre for the access. In order to get in there, the yard itself, otherwise it would be 9.4 acres in size, it would be below the 10 acres. A couple things with this application. It is in the coulee area there that's flagged by the province for potential historic resources. As part of the circulation, we did receive comments back that historic resource clearance will not be required with this application. They have no concerns with it. The other main consideration for council here, and this is something we talked about the other morning, that we'd be wanting, as part of the bylaw review, come back to you to have a discussion about this, is just the CFO there that's in the same quarter section, and the application of that. Now the yard and the subdivision does meet the minimum distance separation policy we have. That separation distance between the confined feeding operation based on the permit numbers and the residential dwelling. The policy in the bylaw and the subdivision does state that a confined feeding operation cannot be subdivided from a quarter section, largely so that the confined feeding operations aren't on the smaller parcels. And also traditionally it was so that there'd be some agricultural land associated, for manure spreading, disposal, that type of thing with the agricultural operation itself. Of course, in some operations that are large, take up a full quarter section, you have no available land anyways in that. But conversely, so with that kind of policy, it's also always been kind of applied, although it doesn't expressly state it in the policy, that on the flip side of that, if you're not allowing the confined feeding operation to be subdivided out of the quarter, in other words, try to keep the quarter intact, would you then allow the yard to be subdivided out of the quarter section, or is the intent that the quarter section is supposed to be kept in its entirety intact? The policy doesn't specifically state that. That's kind of the way it's been applied. So that is one of the policies we'd be looking for some maybe clarity in some bylaw updates. But in the meantime here, as you look at this application, that's just one of the things you have to take into consideration. If obviously with this yard, where it is on the coulee there, what they have, it's it's not removing any land that they would be disposing of manure on, because no manure would be going there. But the yard itself and the residence does meet the minimum distance separation to the confined feeding operation. So that is just something for you to consider as a subdivision authority here, the application of that. You saw in the report there, it said a NDS of 462 meters is required and a measured distance of over 472 meters exists. So when they set up the residence, they were cognizant of that, and they tried to make sure that they're outside the required minimum distance separation at that time. So with this application, this subdivision, as I mentioned, is the first subdivision of the quarter section. During the circulation, there was no other objection, or there was no concerns or objections that I received on it. Since I circulated the application out to you in the agenda report, I just heard back from ATCO Transmission. They have no objections or concerns. So with that, it's just Fortis has requested an easement. So based on this being the first subdivision and then meeting the MDS, I have a recommendation of approval in front of you that would require that waiver of the 0.34 acres over the 10 acres for you to consent to that, to do that. And if approving, the conditions would be that the taxes are paid up to date, development agreement entered into if the county requires it, and that the plan of survey be submitted, the final plan of survey to match any approval that you may give this morning on that, or if any changes. So it'll just be those three conditions.
Thank you, Steve. John? And then
Thank
Lauren?
I have several questions, so if Councillor Hickey would yield for me to go through them all, if you don't mind, would that be okay? Okay. Given that they're basically right at the minimum distance for the CFO, does this essentially, if the subdivision is approved, it's going to prohibit them from expanding the CFO?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's question one. Second question is, has there been a precedent in the past with subdividing out a yard site out of a quarter that had a CFO, or is this something that if we approve this, we would be establishing that precedent today?
Many years ago, there had been a number done. Over the last probably 10 years, since the 2013 bylaw has been put in place,
There has been some.
a couple maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Third question is, if they were to reduce this parcel down to the 10 acres by either shortening some of the boundaries around the where the dwelling is now, would that cause an encroachment issue?
I don't believe it would cause an encroachment issue. It just, not knowing exactly their landscaping plan for that yard, it might encroach into something like that, but their building is well set into that parcel. When they did develop that or put in that application for the residents, they had to do a geotechnical report because they're right on the coulees, so they are well set into kind of the center of that particular, the main body of that subdivision.
Okay, perfect. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a question on the CFO. It is not currently being used, is it?
No, through the chair to Councillor Hickey, the CFO is not currently being used. So with regards to going back once again to the development side of things, which just kind of informs the context for this application, they did reduce the size of the CFO. They applied back to the NRCB to actually reduce the number of animals that could be in that CFO so they could meet the minimum distance separation prior to them applying for their residence, with the anticipation that they would at some point in the future want to populate that feedlot once again. So that's because until you terminate it, it's still grandfathered with the land.
Any other questions? Claus?
With the permit that they have on the CFO right now, I thought there was a rule in place that if it wasn't used for a certain amount of time, that you would lose your permit.
I don't think the NRCB has been doing that. They've been grandfathering, because the corrals are still up and visible. I think in a case where things have been completely taken down, the NRCB takes a different stance on it, but in this case, there's still the physical structure of those corrals in place, so any point in time it could be populated again.
Okay, Mr. Chair, just further to that, that used to be the rule, but they actually technically they rescinded it, so it's not the rule. I think it was 2014, 2015, so they actually took it out of the AOPA regs and they rescinded it, so they don't have that in there anymore, but it used to be there.
What a memory, eh?
Better than mine, apparently.
Any other questions, comments? John?
I'd like to move that subdivision application 2023-0-044 be approved, subject to the parcel size waiver being granted and the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation. Is there any further discussion? John has moved that subdivision application 2023-0-044 be approved, subject to a parcel size waiver being granted and the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Can move down. Item 2 under subdivision applications, 2023-0-043, Green Life Farms Limited. Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this particular subdivision is once again for Green Life Farms, wanting to take a yard out of it, out of a quarter section. This one required, because there was already the parcel out being the seed cleaning facility, we proposed that they had to come back with a lot line adjustment in terms of the rest of their titles to accommodate that residence out. As you can see on the ortho photo, the residence and in your agenda package that they want to take out is in kind of the middle of the section versus on a road, directly close to a road. So it did create some interesting conversations in terms of how they wanted to do that. But they did come back to us with the guidance of Steve and myself with regards to a reconfiguration that we felt from an administration point of view we could support. So as you see on this map, and Steve can probably go through it a little bit more, but they have 4 titles right now. And what they're looking to do with this particular subdivision is they want to consolidate and reconfigure those titles so that they end up with 3 titles that are under the name of Green Life Farms, and then obviously the sea cleaning plant would be the additional on there. So thanks to Steve for providing visuals that make this a lot easier to understand. But that's the case with regards to the subdivision. They wish to take out a 12.87 acre parcel to account for the residents and the area around the residents, and to allow for some future development of that parcel. You can see they'll have a long panhandle type access to the roadway where they have put their new driveway. I will note, just on the ortho, you see the driveway goes to the highway. They have actually changed that driveway so it goes up to the county township road instead, just because there was some issues with regards to this particular access down here. So if you're looking at the map, that's why there's that change, so that it's showing to the north and not to the west of the property. With that, I will pass it off to Steve for the rest of the planning comments and the recommendation.
Mr. Chair, Council, this application is a proposal to do a land title reconfiguration between the adjacent quarter sections that the owners have and enable the subdivision of an existing residence in the middle. That residence, I believe it was 1988, was established there. The yard contains a dwelling, shop building, and a barn. As part of the yard, it is at 12.87 acres, so it would require a waiver. Since last it is above that 10 acres. But that area as well does include the access driveway. So what you see in the green there, that's actually part of their title. So that has been surveyed in by the surveyors. It's approximately 15 meters wide, and become part of the title land for the yard, resulting in the 12.87 acre parcel. The part of the proposal with the applicants is they own all that land is in addition to wanting to obtain a separate title for the yard for one of their family members, is also that, as you can see in the photo there on the part of the assembly of land, I guess, is to separate some of the pasture coulee land from actual farm cultivated land. So you can see in the photo there, the north half of the portion of the northwest and northeast quarter, there's a pivot on there, so that pivot area actually before was over the 2 quarter sections. So part of this proposal will tie all that land together into one agricultural title. There is a bit of coulee land in there, but it will put all the irrigated pivot land onto the one northern title. And then the south, kind of southwestern larger portion there is more of the coulee, and there's some pasture in the coulee land there. As well, as Hillary's shown the picture of the existing before on page 47 with the green, which was the southeast portion above the river. That wouldn't be a standalone anymore, isolated down there. It would be tied together with the land on the west side there, all part of that one larger title. After some meetings with Hillary and myself and some back and forth, in the end, they thought this configuration would work for them and their agricultural operations and what they're trying to do. So overall, with doing this, there would be a actual reduction in titles in that section of land from what they currently have. There'd be one less in the end, so they'd be going to one less title, which they're content with because the overall end result would meet their needs better. So with that, looking at the yard itself, as mentioned, it would be at 12.7 acres. That would include the improvements on there as well as the septic field, which would be totally confined within the title for the acreage, which is required under the private septic regulations. The enlarged agricultural titles are both physically connected to the North Municipal Road allowance for legal access into those parcels. As mentioned, the 199.17 acre agricultural title, which would be the north one, being consolidated, contains the irrigation pivot, and then the larger agricultural title, which is the 232.79 acres, is largely the coulee and pasture land. The yard coming out of here does meet the MDS over to the east to the confined feeding operation, as over 1,000 meters exists, so it's well over double what's needed. The application in itself does conform to the reconfiguration of titles policies, where you can reconfigure property and land with no additional number of titles increased. In this case, you're actually decreasing titles. There'd be a reduction. As mentioned, the approval of the 12.87 yard would require a waiver because it's above the 10. That consideration may be based on the rationale of the driveway access being included, which itself is almost 3 acres of land. It's 2.96 acres for that access road area. The adjusted agricultural parcels all exceed your minimum agricultural parcel size. This application is similar to the last one. The historical resources applies. Alberta Culture states that they will not require historical resource clearance for this, and they have no objections to it. So with that, on that basis, I have recommended approval to you on the conditions that taxes are paid up to date, a development agreement entered into if the county requires it, that if final survey plan be submitted to us by an Alberta land surveyor that consolidates those portions together, so they cannot be re-subdivided without coming back to you, the subdivision authority, as part of an application for your consideration. And that Fortis, Alberta did request an easement, so that'd be the fourth condition. We had heard back from a couple other utilities, Aqua's Transmission, and no other utilities have asked or requested an easement, so it'll just be Fortis. So with that, and the consideration of parcel size waiver, I recommend approval to you on those four conditions.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions from council? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two. So that other house that's on the edge of 845, is it in that, right there?
Yeah, it's in a, thank you, through the chair, through Councillor Hickey, that's on a separate title.
Okay, and is there any way, when you look at the diagram of the yard size, it doesn't appear to need that much land? Is there a specific reason why they're asking for that much?
Yeah, so I'll just pull up this one here. Sorry, it's quite hard to see. So with regards to the yard, they've kind of placed their house and buildings in the center of what they proposed for the flat land in that particular area. No real other rationalization for that other than that was the general, the majority of the flat land in that particular coulee area. So they wanted to capture that in the event that they needed to, wanted to build, I think they wanted to build perhaps some additional accessory buildings on the property. So that would accommodate that. They, here, I'll just pull up this. So you can see on the air photo here, there was a corral that kind of crossed the boundary, which isn't being captured, but they wanted to capture up to the kind of the field area there to have a larger area for their future building area. And then it does capture a little bit of this coulee land down here. So definitely nothing that they could reduce the size potentially if that's council's desire, but that's just how they proposed it based off of the lay of the land.
Did you have another one, Lauren? Okay. Good, Klaus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was a pile of work for you guys, probably, figure that one out.
Took a while.
And I guess it's the former owner had put the house in there and everything like that, if I'm correct. And yeah, with that, I think they figured this out pretty good, that they can go ahead and do what they wanted to do. So with that, I'll move that the subdivision application dash 2023-0-043 be approved, subject to the parcel size waiver being granted and conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, Klaus. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Lauren.
Well, I guess I have an issue with that parcel size, because if we allow, just because they want it, does that mean everybody who comes along gets it? Like that, there's no rationale to it, really.
Go ahead, John.
I had sort of a similar concern with it, with this one and the previous one. I rationalized it in the sense that that we normally would allow a 10-acre parcel as a homestead. I'm sorry. And the driveway leading in, actually, if you took that portion of it out, it would be just slightly under 10 acres. So it would be about 9.97 acres, somewhere in there, which is why when I originally looked at this and sort of had a concern about, yeah, okay, well, why are we doing this for one person when in other situations we have clearly said, no, it needs to be in the 10 acres. Taking out the driveway still gives them just under that 10 acres, which is where I kind of rationalized it and said, okay, well, I understand where this makes sense.
Thank you, John. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just further to that, yeah, on this application, they just, because that corral area there, they're gonna remove, it's not gonna be part of where it straddles over the quarter section line there. On the yard itself, their house and the other building there is pretty much, it's as far as south as it can go. They're they're at the, very much the setback line to the coulee there, and the house was built in '88. They can't go any further south with any improvements on there. So their rationale is that just to include a bit of that north area, if they wanted to relocate a bit of that corral or were to do other yard improvements, they would have it on the north side, because they can't go in the other direction, really to the west or the south. And that part just wasn't part of their irrigation pivot, cultivated land part or like that. But it is a discretionary item, and if you're not satisfied with that, you could just, it's up to you if you wanted to just not give the waiver and give the 10 acres, and they'd have to cut that out and just reduce the size smaller. But it's a discretionary item for you to consider.
Thank you, Steve. Go ahead, John.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we rolled this back to 10 acres, would they be able to cut it out of the coulee side and still have no encroachment issues?
They could probably cut out some of that coulee land south of the house. Sorry, it doesn't show up very well on here, but the coulee land kind of goes, sorry, I'll pull up this one instead. So they've kind of squared it off like this in terms of their boundaries. So they have included some coulee land in there, so that's undevelopable area also. So that could be an option, is to say that they have to cut out the coulee land. The flat land would be desirable for them in terms of future if they wanted to have any other additional buildings there. But I'll throw that back to council for discussion.
Thanks, Hillary. So there is a motion has been made. The recommendation has been moved that by clause that the subdivision application 2023-0-043 be approved subject to a parcel size waiver being granted and the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. Is there any further discussion? Not, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank
We'll
you.
move to our 9:30 a.m. delegation. With us this morning, we have the Green Acres Foundation. We have CEO Dawna Coslovi and Councillor Jeff Carlson, Board Chair, here with us this morning. Please step forward.
You want us to sit or
Yeah, sure.
stand or?
Just sit down. Yeah, you betcha.
I'm not dancing. I'm not used to morning council meetings. Today was a struggle for me.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. The floor is yours whenever you'd like to start.
Thank you, Reeve Campbell and members of council. Nice to see you all here. Nice to see you as well, Larry. Appreciate the opportunity just to come down and chat a bit about our Green Acres annual report, not only because we're incredibly proud of the organization, especially the work that's been done over the last year or a couple of years, and especially during the pandemic, but because one of our strategic pillars is strategic partnerships and alliances, and our strongest partnerships are definitely with our municipality members. And the county is basically the holding area, the catch-all for all of our member municipalities, including the county, are contained in the county. We did say we were going to give a little bit of a Green Acres 101. I'm hoping Dawna is going to give Green Acres 101. I can give a bit of an overview, but she's got the history of, well, not the last 63 years, but we are celebrating 63 years as a housing management body. Dawna's been at the helm for many years, so she knows much more than I do. So maybe I'll turn it over to Dawna just to talk a bit about the history of Green Acres and how things work, especially the requisition, because it is tax time and we know we all get the questions. So Dawna, I hope you're good to jump in.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know how you turn this on. Push it on, turn it on. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, first of all, for allowing us to come here. And as Jeff has said, Green Acres has been around since 1960. We are one of the oldest. We had the first lodge in the province, one of the first lodges in the province, and that's where the Pemmican Lodge is now, right by the Galt Museum. That was one of the very, very first ones. It was built in 1959 and opened in 1960. Since that time, of course, things have changed. Okay, that was a lodge, and the government of the day thought they needed to have some sort of housing because people were living in their homes, then they go to the hospital, but there was nothing in between there. They would go to long-term care. So they came up with the idea of, let's have this lodge program. And this is unique in this province. We're the only province in Canada that has a lodge program that is mainly for low to moderate income seniors. And that was 60 years ago that the government thought about this, and it still holds true today. So now we have people can stay at home, but then now this kind of bridges the gap between home, and it's still their home, but and long-term care. So Green Acres has two portfolios. We are also a management agent on behalf of the government. We handle their seniors apartment buildings. So we have 9 seniors apartment buildings that are all owned by the government. And I'm saying this, oh no, it's June the 1st. All of them except for one is owned by the government, because we now have got title, effective today, on one of those properties. The property in Barons has now been, we have purchased the property in Barons. But up until now, we ran the apartment portfolio for the province. And those, again, very low income. It's based on 30% of a person's income. Okay, so they are affordable. That has nothing to do with your requisition, though. Okay, because they are set 30%. There's no services besides lawns, snow shoveling, things like this. We don't have staff in them 24/7. In the lodge portfolio, we have 9 lodges, and those ones there do have services, and that's where your requisition comes to. Every taxpayer, I guess I should say, in Alberta, pays toward some housing management body that offers lodge services. So even people that don't have a lodge in their municipality, because their seniors are still allowed to have access to a lodge, they pay into, like Crossfield, they pay into some lodge facility, the management body, their requisition. And that's based on the Alberta Housing Act. That gives the housing management bodies like Green Acres the authority to requisition funds from the taxpayers of this province. And that's so that we can keep, again, the rents low. As you can see, hopefully you have a copy, but if you don't, I do have extra copies. The average rent doesn't equate to the average costs to house someone in a lodge facility because of the services, the meals, the housekeeping, supervision, the activities. It does cost more than what the rents are. So does that kind of help you out a little bit, explaining the requisition? Because I know that's a really hard, because a lot of municipalities say, well, let's say in Barons and Nobleford, they do have a self-contained apartment building there. So for many years, they thought, well, our requisition is going towards that. It's not, because that's a government-owned building. We are government-funded to run their apartment buildings for them. Okay, good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you, and I appreciate Dawna asking. I noticed in your package, our report to the community was there, so we hope you've had a chance to look through it, because I won't read it word for word to you. A couple things I did want to highlight. Basically, on the last 2 pages, and Dawna brought it up in our financial overview, the costs, the revenues and expenses are all there. And we do keep the average rents about a third lower than what the average cost to provide these rents are, and that's because of our requisition. So we're very, very proud that we are able to house folks who are in need. And the other financial overviews are there, our board, and I would like to thank you for the appointment of Councillor Hickey. He's excellent. He's now, sorry, Lauren, chair of our finance committee. The new ones always get appointed chairs of things. So thank you, Lauren. And the board's very proud of some of the work we've done. You may know our new Abbey Road Terrace by LCI CCH will be opening
July 1st.
July 1st. We were hoping June 1st, but it'll be July 1st, and that was a huge investment on behalf of our board. Something that another one of our board members, Heather Caldwell, always wants me to highlight is that even during the challenges of the pandemic, you can see the stats there, 99% of our residents feel safe and secure. And that was a big initiative we undertook to really create a sense of community and home and safety for all of our residents in our Green Acres community. So I won't spend any more time. I'll just ask if any of you have any questions of us. We'd be pleased to answer it and pleased to come before you anytime you want to chat about Green Acres.
Thank you very much. I would open it up to council. Are there any questions, comments that you have this time? Go ahead, Morris.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. That facility in Picture Butte that has been talked about, you know, well, enhancing it or whatever you want to call it, but it seems to be put off all the time, like year after year. What's happening there? Is something on the horizon?
Thanks, Councillor Zenstra. Yeah, Piami has been at the top of our capital projects for many years now.
Yes.
We keep hoping it'll be at the top of the government's priorities. We've been working really hard, as you know, you've done some work, advocacy work on our behalf as of our other member municipalities. We are trying to rebuild. I don't know if you've been through Piami, but it's, how old is it now?
70, built in
Yeah,
the 70s, so
50-something.
50-something, yeah.
50-some year. Okay.
For a few years, so I guess I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah.
Nice. And it is well used. It's always at capacity. It's well loved, and it's necessary for Picture Butte, in my mind. But it is old. We just toured MLA Scow through there, and he's a very large
He's a
fellow.
large man.
And so he understood the challenges of trying to navigate those hallways and the bathrooms, especially with a walker, which is what I would say 80% or more of our residents do utilize. So we are advocating a way at the province, because it is their building. So we are trying to get them to come to the table with partners and fund a rebuild. Dawna, did you have anything else?
Well, just also to add to that, for those that don't know, part of that building, we house the AHS's urgent care, so their lab, their x-ray, and their physicians, their doctor's office is right in that building too. So it's really important that we keep that building alive, that we keep it vibrant, because that is so important for that town. We're also their largest employer in the Picture Butte area. So besides the huge feedlots, I guess I should say that. Probably the feedlots, they probably have more than us. They have more heads, yeah. But, so I am working with AHS right now, because our agreement with them comes to an end at the end of in 2/24. But we are looking at renewal for that one, because it's really important that we keep that one. Now, part of that building also, in 2004, Green Acres built onto that building, if you know. We built on Piami Place. So all the seniors in that area, that whole geographic area, they don't ever have to leave there, you know, because we can house them if they're totally independent, if they start needing a little bit of care, right up to memory care. So it's an important aspect for that community, and we have been this close. Government, we were right at their top. We were their top 1 or 2 projects, and then they changed governments on us. So we are working on it, and anything that we will be asking from the municipalities for your support again, but we are definitely advocating for that. We want to have ownership of that building. We have applied for ownership because the government wants to get out of the capital. They don't want to own buildings. So we've even suggested that, okay, let us own it, let's be partners. The government is not in the mood, or there's not in their mandate anymore to fund capital projects. We have to come there. So we're going to be coming to the table, and the board has been really, really supportive. They've already earmarked money out of reserves for this project, and we keep harping on that. We keep saying, we will be your partner. We're not just going there with our hand out and saying, give us the whole thing. We want to be a partner. So anything you guys can do, we certainly appreciate it too.
Yeah, and Councillor, we did just lose our former minister,
Yeah.
Jeremy Nixon,
Nixon.
was the Minister of Seniors and Housing. So we don't know who we're going to get, so we're going to have to start again. So we'll be coming back to the table to ask for more advocacy from all of our municipalities and all of our residents. So
We can be hopeful that perhaps MLA Scow will be appointed as our minister.
That would be very handy.
Well, definitely, we definitely realize the importance of that facility to the town, but also to, obviously, to the county as well. So anything we can do, please reach out to us. We'd love to help you with that advocacy.
Okay.
And thank you, Reeve Campbell. One of our mandates is to allow folks to I guess the trendy word is age in place. And we do find that many of the residents from either our smaller municipalities or the county would rather be in a place like picture Butte, where they can get all the care rather than having to come into Lethbridge or other areas.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Thank you. Claus, and then to Lauren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I live in the Pittsburgh Butte area too.
Okay.
And so I've been there many times. It looks like it's well-kept area, but there's work to be done. And now we had the hailstorm, that was last year, and are the air conditioning up and running again? Because, I mean, that was it's gonna be a worry that wouldn't be happening. And the other question I have is, when the Green Acres, they wanna take over these buildings and the other buildings, because the government doesn't wanna be in the business of owning any buildings, what is financially, how is that gonna change? Are we gonna rely on more grants that way, that we can function and that we can work with these lodges together?
Okay, to answer your question about the hail damage and the air conditioning, yes, it will be up and running. It's already running right now, actually.
I wish mine was.
And unfortunately, that was a terrible storm. We did try to work with risk management and the government, because we said, rather than putting that money towards changing the windows and everything else like this, why don't you pull the pin right then? Use that insurance money towards the rebuild. That didn't work. So we tried, okay?
Tried everything.
As far as us purchasing the buildings, if they are the seniors apartment buildings like the one in Barron's, that will not affect your requisition because it is a self-contained building. So what we've gone into an agreement with the province is they will still, they are still funding the senior self-contained apartment portfolio. So no different than now. We will still submit our budget to the province. They will say yes or no, whatever. They'll either deficit fund us if we're going to run into a deficit, or if we have a surplus, we do have to send it back to them. We have signed a grant for Barron's for capital maintenance and ongoing things. So that's part of the deal. When we take on one of these buildings, we have to have the assurance that ongoing maintenance and things like this will still continue to be funded through the government.
And Councillor, maybe further to your question, is one of the benefits of us owning is then we can apply to other grant funders, other orders of government, et cetera, and the province as well for funding. When the province owns something, CMHC and other areas won't give us any funding for those. So ownership allows us to try and get other grants brought in to our area.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as everybody knows, the county has no physical plants, so to speak, in its municipality. So we have to rely heavily upon Green Acres to look after our residents when the time comes, whether it be in Coaldale or Picture Butte or wherever it is. But without Green Acres, they would have nowhere to go. So it's an essential service, and we're 100% behind it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate hearing that. And we've been going to all of our member municipalities, and everyone is very, taking care of seniors is always a good news story, or should always be a good news story. And so that's one of the things that we are intent on bringing to the light, is that this program is unique in Canada, and it is invaluable. I talked to other folks across Canada, and they're putting their family members in housing, and it's $7,000, $8,000 a month. So thank the party that was in power 63 years ago for their foresight. I think they did an incredible service to the seniors of this province. And it is such a fairly cheap requisition. When
It
I
is.
got my tax bill from across the way, it was about $40 that I contribute, and that's a very small price to pay for, because I'll be moving in as soon as I hit 65.
I was gonna ask that question.
I'm getting close.
Well, I sure appreciate you coming today. Thank you for sharing your report with us. Thank you for making some time for us. Thank you for what you do. To all the, to the board members, to everyone doing the work, we sure appreciate it. Is there any final questions from council? Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys have a great day. Let's pray for some rain. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have about 8 minutes till 10 o'clock. Why don't we take a recess and we will resume with our public hearing at 10 a.m. Thank you, everyone. We'll call our regular meeting back to order at 10:01 a.m. this morning. And next on our agenda, we will move to item E, public hearings. We have a public hearing this morning. So with that, we will recess the regular meeting. We are here today to hold the public hearing for Bylaw 23-012, road closure, sale, and consolidation. I'd ask for a motion to open the public hearing. Oh, everyone. Mark?
So moved.
Mark has moved to open the public hearing for Bylaw 23-012, road closure, sale, and consolidation. Is there any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The public hearing is being held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act as amended. The public hearing is being live streamed via the county's YouTube page. With that, the public hearing for Bylaw 23-012 is now officially open. I will now ask the Supervisor of Planning and Development to review the nature of the hearing and provide an overview of what is being proposed. Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Council. So this is a public hearing for Bylaw 23-012, which is a road closure proposed in the hamlet of Iron Springs. The county's policy 109A does allow for the sale and consolidation, closure, sale, and consolidation of undeveloped or underutilized roads within the county. And at the April 20th meeting, the first reading of this bylaw was held. The applicant has made an application to close all of 4th Street, which is the main larger area within the area in question, and also the adjacent laneways. They wish to consolidate these parcels all together with their adjacent lands. They own a number of parcels in this particular block, and they want to consolidate them all together. In reviewing this application and in discussion with the applicant, it has been determined that the 4th Street and the adjacent laneways are not required as part of the county's future road network in the hamlet of Iron Springs. If future development were to occur in Iron Springs, it would probably be going to the south and following along the east-west avenue versus going on the street side here. And the other consideration in Iron Springs is that the parcel sizes are substandard because there is no municipal septic service, wastewater service in the hamlet of Iron Springs. So by consolidating all these parcels together, they have a much larger title that they can work with, develop on, and meeting the county's land use bylaw requirements. With regards to the road closure, if it were successful, as I mentioned, all the lands would be consolidated with the adjacent properties, and the titles would be consolidated into one title by an Alberta land surveyor. We did talk to Alberta Transportation about this application. They had no objections with the county proceeding with the road closure. With this particular application, we did advertise it in the Sunny South News on the May 16th and May 23rd editions. And in addition, because there are adjacent landowners that would have an interest in this area, we did mail out a specific notice to them. The applicant did reach out to all the landowners in this area just to ensure that there were no concerns with the proposed road closure, and we received none, and they received consent from those from those landowners. So with that, that concludes my report for the public hearing portion. Put it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Hillary. As this is a public hearing, this is council's opportunity to receive input from the public. I don't see anyone here to make a presentation, but that being said, those making presentations are asked to state their name and review their points. We ask you refrain from asking questions of council. The intention of the public hearing is not to debate or defend the contents of the bylaw or the position which individual councillors may have on the bylaw. Questions asked of a councillor may be questions asked of a councillor by a presenter may be ruled out of order. Again, seeing as how there is no one present, I will, however, move down and I'll ask if there's anyone wishing to speak to the proposed bylaw. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the proposed bylaw? And a third time, is there anyone wishing to speak to the proposed bylaw? If there's nothing further, I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Morris has moved to close the public hearing for Bylaw 23-012. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. can now resume our public meeting at 10:06 a.m. this morning. You have a recommendation before you. Is there any questions at this time? John?
No question. I would just like to move that bylaw 23-012 be sent to the Minister of Transportation for approval.
Thank you, John. Is there any discussion? John has moved the recommendation that bylaw 23-012 be sent to the Minister of Transportation for approval. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
Why don't we jump back into our subdivisions? And number 3, subdivision application 2023-0-057, Shimek. Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. This next subdivision that's before you is a lot line readjustment to readjust the quarter section agricultural land with an existing acreage to accommodate a pivot that was put on the property. What they're proposing is to change the size of the acreage from the existing 6.7 acres and reduce it in size to 6.08 acres in size. And this particular application does meet all the subdivision criteria of the land use bylaw. With that, I will go to Steve for the comments and recommendation.
Mr. Chair, the application in front of you is a property realignment, reconfiguration of the size, and then largely the east side of the existing property line. The current yard title was created in 1990. The main purpose of this application is to account for the irrigation pivot. You see the larger pivot on there and how it goes into the existing parcel title, and return the irrigable land to the remnant quarter section title. That involves about 1.43 acres of land. There are no buildings or other improvements located on this part of the parcel, and it is farmed as part of the cultivated agricultural land. There's also a second component to this application to extend the little southern yard portion there, east property line, over approximately 54 meters to the east to capture the existing septic field and bring it into compliance with the sewer regulation and put it on the title with the dwelling. Historically, where the septic was, and in relation to that 1990 original subdivision application, it was outside the yard title on the agricultural component, which you could do at that time. In 2015, the code was changed and it has to be on the parcel now. So as part of this adjustment, they're going to include that septic area into the yard title. So the, as you can see in the photo there, the yard's dwelling and main improvements are located on the southern portion. The northern portion contains a large Quonset building and some grain bins. By doing the adjustment, it does create kind of a odd-looking parcel. We're often used to the squares and rectangles, but the landowner wants to not lose the north piece. He wants to keep that as part of the yard. It's dry, it's outside the pivot area, and he wants to keep the Quonset shop building with the yard and not put that back to the farmland portion. He wants to keep that as part of the yard part. So with that, the configuration, like I say, kind of does the little cutout there kind of area for the pivot area. But as mentioned previously, as long as you're satisfied with it, a surveyor can survey any kind of shape. It doesn't have to be squared or rectangular. To the applicant, keeping that all as part of the yard makes sense to him and what he desires. Parcels itself will be reduced, as mentioned, slightly from the 6.57 acres down to 6.808, and complies with your bylaw and below the 10-acre parcel size, and above the 2-acre minimum that's required as well. So with that, during the circulation of this application, there was no objections or concerns received. Since I sent the agenda report over to you, I hadn't heard back from that time hardly any of the utility agencies. We've now heard back from all of them. Nobody requires an easement. LNID has also sent in comments since. There's no concerns or objections. Just the typical adjustment that needs to be made there that they have to address with LNID. So with that, with it being reconfiguration realignment, complies with the policies in the bylaw and the subdivision criteria. No objections. I have recommended approval to you. And that would be on the standard conditions, the taxes are paid up to date, development agreement entered to, if required with the county. And the third important one being that the plan survey is submitted with that consolidation land and the new alignment. Then new plans registered, so no further subdivision can occur without an application being submitted and coming back to use the subdivision authority for consideration.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions from council? Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward, so I would move that the subdivision application 2023-0-057 be approved subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved the recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Mark has moved that subdivision application 2023-0-057 be approved subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And our final subdivision application for today, number 4, subdivision application 2023-0-059, K. Sugimoto and Sons Limited. Hillary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a subdivision and reconfiguration of titles for this particular farm. You can see just from this image that Steve has created here that there is quite a few titles in this area. There's 3 titles currently. Some of them one of them does not actually have physical access to a road. And in discussion with Mr. Sugimoto, it was determined that a reconfiguration would be desirable, one from them on their farming component, and then two, to allow for proper access to their existing parcels. So they are proposing to reconfigure those 3 titles and to, create 4 new titles. So kind of having just over 2 quarter sections, almost 3/4 sections of land, and taking that particular area and turning it into 4 more logically organized titles for their purposes of their farming operation and how they like to move forward on that. So with that, I will just say that this is in the very south end of the county, right abutting the county of Warner. So dryland farming predominantly area. I do believe they have some irrigation on this site that they wanted to rectify also. With that, I will get Steve to speak to the planning comments and the recommendation.
Hey, Mr. Chair, the application in front of you is a reconfiguration of agricultural land, so some land swap and realign boundaries going on. It's to better align the boundaries to the cultivated land and the irrigation and how what works for the applicant. This landing here consists of both cultivated cropland, hay, and some pasture. There's an existing 286.3 acre parcel, which in that drawing was the pink, kind of reddy pink color that you see on the screen, which is a odd configuration and contains land amongst the northwest, northeast, and the southwest quarter sections. It was actually surprised when we were meeting with the landowner, going over his titles. He didn't realize his title was actually this way. So I was so surprised to him of how the title actually was set up. But then additionally, there's an existing 27.77 acre parcel, as Hillary pointed out, one in the green there, which is the west side of the irrigation canal. So that's a cut-off piece from the southeast quarter section that was fragmented from the other side on the east, and the remnant portion, which was done a very long time ago. Couldn't find the history of that, and I'm not sure if even the irrigation district might created it. We have no record of it, so But anyways, Mr. Sugimoto has it, but it has no physical or legal access, so it's an orphan isolated land parcel there. So part of this application as well, in the rearrangement, sitting down with Mr. Sugimoto and his son going over the stuff, there are corrals and some agricultural buildings located on the northwest parcel. They'll become part of a 92.75 acre title. And to the immediate south of that, south of the quarter section line is the owner's residential yard with a dwelling. So that would be on a separate title. So they're separating the farm component from the residence. So with that, access will not change, or for the yard part, will still be, you can see there's a west road allowance. This rearrangement will allow that former isolated piece, which will become part of that most southerly, which is 85.7 acre title. So it won't be isolated anymore. They can access the west road also. We will need confirmation on the survey here, which would be a condition on the approval, where the existing quarter section line is. With the existing yard, there's a small shed or building there that could be encroaching. We'll confirm that with the survey sketch, but if it is, Mr. Sugimoto will just relocate it, remove it. It's not a major issue for him. And that'll be confirmed through the surveyor sketch. Overall, the proposal meets the criteria for reconfiguration in the agricultural parcels. All the parcels exceed your 80 acre minimum, 70 acre if there's exceptions on this title. But they're all well above that, so they conform to the agricultural parcel size. As Hillary mentioned, this is right on the boundary with the County of Warner and part of the IDP area. This type of proposal for reconfigurations or agricultural parcels that meet your policies are in alignment and conform to the IDP with the County of Warner. County of Warner hasn't responded to the application. But as I also work with the County of Warner, I know they'd have no concerns with this, and they allow the same type of policy on their side and allow the 80 acre parcels as well. So, so we shouldn't have any concerns with that. So during the circulation of this application, there were no objections or concerns received. Since I sent it out, Alberta Health Services, Fortis, and the Raymond Irrigation District have all responded. Nobody has any concerns or objections to the proposal. There are just mentioned that the permanent irrigation acres will be distributed between the proposed new agricultural parcels based on the current the policies. None of the irrigated land can be under 50 acres, and in this proposal in front of you, none is. The smallest parcel is 85 acres, so the irrigation shouldn't be affected. So with that, I have recommended approval to you based on the reconfiguration policies and the agricultural subdivision policies, which allow agricultural parcels at 80 acres or greater, subject to conditions of taxes paid up to date, development agreement entered into if required. The third would be the consolidation and the new plan registered to create these new boundaries from the surveyor. The fourth condition that they provide a surveyor sketch to illustrate the exact dimensions and parcel size, and to illustrate to us the three improvements closest to the northwest and southwest quarter section line, just to ensure that there's no encroachments. And number five, that if the surveyor sketch illustrates any encroachments over the property line, that the applicant shall remove the encroachments, or alternatively provide an encroachment agreement to the satisfaction of the subdivision authority prior to final endorsement of the subdivision. And the fifth was the relation to the sixth was relation to the easements, but we've heard back from them all now, and nothing is required on that. But on that basis and those conditions, I've recommended approval to you.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions from council? John?
I'd like to move that subdivision application number 2023-0-059 be approved, subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation. Is there any further discussion? John has moved that subdivision application 2023-0-059 be approved, subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Hillary and Steve.
Thank you.
Just a few more, Hillary.
Just a few.
So we will move down then in our agenda. Department reports, G1, Community Services, G1.1, Bylaw 23-018, reconfigure the land use districts for portions of Northwest 21, 11, 20 west of the 4, and Plan 18103343, Block 1, Lot 1, first reading. Hillary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned, this is first reading for this particular land use bylaw amendment. It's a bit of a different one for the county. They're not proposing to add any new land use districts. They just want to reconfigure the existing ones that are in place. They want to, so currently there is Hamlet Commercial, Hamlet Industrial, and Hamlet Residential, all owned by the same individuals. And in order to reconfigure and best utilize these lands, they would like to enlarge the residential component of it. As I mentioned, there's no wastewater system in Iron Springs, so they would like to have the ability to include that in their title. As it stands, it is not included in their title, and also to have the opportunity to build some accessory buildings and perhaps a new residence at some point down the road. And then the commercial area and the industrial areas remain largely the same, but slightly reduced in size. So you can see on the county's GIS system that what it looks like now. So the titles in question are the long linear industrial parcel, the very small confined Hamlet residential area, and then the Hamlet commercial area. So that's kind of the context with regards to this particular application. I have included in the report how the numbers pan out in terms of the acreage sizes. So their Hamlet residential would increase from 0.14 acres to 2.57 acres. The Hamlet commercial would be reduced from 1.24 acres to 0.64, and the Hamlet industrial reduced from 5.7 to 3.86 acres in size. With that, that's pretty much it for the first reading of this bylaw, so I will put it back to you, Mr. Chairman, for any comments or discussion.
Thank you, Hillary. I'd open it up to council. Do you have any questions, input at this time? Seeing none. John?
I'd like to move that bylaw 23-018 be read a first time.
Thank you, John. John has moved first reading of bylaw 23-018. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Hillary. We can move down to G1.2, bylaw 23-014, road closure, sale, and consolidation, first reading. Hillary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this next bylaw for first reading is a road closure application. In discussion with the McCain group with regards to their new development and their desire to do some work within the road right-of-way, it was determined that that the township road, which was a road that was created when the Highway 3 was twinned back probably in around 1995 or 1998, that this road was created to provide access to probably the McCain's that was being constructed at that point in time and to some adjacent titles. In looking at the objectives of the county and McCain's, it has been determined that through the process of consolidation that this particular road is no longer required as part of the county's road network, and that it could be sold to McCain's and consolidated into their title, and all their titles would then be put together, so there would be no orphaned or titles that wouldn't have access in the future. The application, if the road closure was successful and consolidated with the adjacent titles, the surveyor would work with land titles in terms of consolidating all those titles together. And the county has, in discussions with McCain's in terms of their new development, has entered into a memorandum of understanding to allow them to do some works within that road right of way while this road closure is in process. We did circulate this already to Alberta Transportation, as we know this is a timely matter in terms of development of this particular site. Alberta Transportation has indicated they have no concerns with regards to the proposed road closure, as long as the titles are consolidated, and they have already granted kind of their tentative approval to this particular application and moving it forward through the bylaw approval process. So this being first reading of the bylaw, it is anticipated that we would have the public hearing at the beginning of July, and then it, as with all road closures, would be sent up to the minister for final approval, and then back to the county for the second and third reading. With that, I will turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, if there's any discussion.
Thank you, Hillary. Open it up to council for any questions or any discussion. Claus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that bylaw 23-014 be read at first time.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved first reading of bylaw 23-014. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Hillary. Moving down, G1.3, bylaw 23-002, Country Crossroads Estate Area Structure Plan, and bylaw 23-003, Land Use Bylaw Amendment, Rural Agriculture to Group Country Residential, second reading. And just maybe a technical matter on this, since Councillor Vanderveen was not here for the first reading.
Public hearing.
And the public hearing, he will be abstaining from potential votes today.
Thank you.
Hillary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. So as you recall or you may recall, on April the 20th, we had a public hearing with regards to this proposed area structure plan and the rezoning application to create an area structure plan for a 66-acre title, being a parcel that's within the Southwest 5/8/20 west of the 4th, from and then also, excuse me, redesignating that title from rural agriculture to group country residential. This particular parcel is located just to the north of Highway 508 and to the west of Highway 4. In the previous discussion at the public hearing, I have provided in my report just some brief background notes with regards to the public hearing. There was many of the adjacent landowners had concerns with regards to the proposed development, including the density, creating more urban than rural environment, increased noise, traffic, crime, and reduced quality of life for the adjacent landowners if the bylaws were approved by County Council. There were some adjacent residents who did support the application, given that the lands were suitable. They determined that the lands were suitable for development given the low agricultural value of the lands in question. County Council approved the postponement of second reading of the bylaw in order to get additional information regarding the availability of potable water. That the lots there were some lots that were under 2 acres in size. They wanted to have that rectified. And it also asked the applicant about the sewage disposal on the size of the parcels if dugouts were to be used as a means for potable water. The applicant's consultant has submitted a revised site plan that increased the size of those lots that were under 2 acres, and also to account for if dugouts were to be located on the parcels, to slightly increase the size of those parcels to accommodate that while still allowing for a septic field to meet our standards on the 2-acre parcels. Their proposal did reduce the number of parcels from 25 to 22 lots. The applicant's consultant also confirmed that the County of Lethbridge Rural Water Association does not have any water units available for this development at this time, and that the plan is to purchase water units when and if they become available. The other option that they proposed in their plan for potable water will be irrigation water that would be stored in individual dugouts and treated in-house by each landowner. So that's kind of just the synopsis of the public hearing, and also the information that was brought back to council with regards to the questions they had asked to clarify those particular matters. So there are some alternatives for county council to consider with regards to moving forward in this particular situation. The bylaws, both of them could be read for a second time and subsequently a third time. If it was read for a second time, the area structure plan could be as amended if county council was amenable to the revised site plan that the applicants have, or the applicant's consultant has provided. The other alternatives that I have outlined would be that county council may refuse second reading of this bylaw. This would alleviate the concerns expressed by the adjacent landowners and would address concerns related not to adhering to all of the county policies and guiding documents. The cons to this, there could be, obviously, they would forego the development and future tax revenue from said development. County council may request that the lot sizes be increased in size if that is it's at their discretion to do so. This would alleviate probably some of the concerns with regards to the density of the development and changing the character of the area from more rural to a more urban environment, and the larger lot sizes may be more compatible with the adjacent lot sizes that are already existing in the area. The cons with this particular option would be that the developer would have fewer lots to recover any costs of development, such as developing the stormwater management plan and the roads. So those are kind of the options that I've laid out, three main options. Just with regards to area structure plans, the applicant can propose whatever they want to propose, but at the end of the day, if county council decides they need a change based off of feedback they have been provided, you can amend that area structure plan on your own, to benefit the whole county. So say if there was a request to change the lot sizes, county council in discussion amongst yourselves could decide what that particular lot size would be. That would be have to be incorporated into the plan and into the subdivision that would come in the future. So just to clarify, this the area structure plan belongs to the county at this juncture, and if it's approved, it's no longer the applicant's area structure plan, it becomes the county's area structure plan that we have to implement. So I hope that kind of clarifies some options that you have, and I will pass it back to you, Mr. Chairman, for discussion.
Thank you, Hillary. I would open up to council. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one other concern a lot of people expressed was this 300-meter setback. But is that map on, I don't know what page it is, page 279? Is that the 300 meters from the last developable spot in Dawna subdivision there? Or how does that work?
So the 300 meters that they've identified in the plan itself is actually to the communal septic system that would be located in the Taylor Business Park. It doesn't account for the 300 meters to a business park in general, which is a general guideline that we have in our municipal development plan. In our municipal development plan, we did indicate that it is desirable to have, to not put residential too close to industrial parks because there can be off-site impacts to that, obviously. In the case of the Taylor Business Park, which was approved in 2014, one thing that was done in this business park that is different than some of our other business parks is that when there is to be a green strip along the east side of the canal to create a buffer kind of between the business park and the existing residences to the west. I do believe that buffer was about 15 or 20 meters wide. And then we also required that that area to the east of the canal also be business light industrial. Business light industrial is more inherently commercial type based businesses, so more of your like contractor services, potential retail, no manufacturing would be in that particular area. So quite a reduction in off-site impacts from business light industrial to rural general industrial, which is the darker purple area to the east. So in looking at this application from an administrative point of view, in terms of how the municipal development plan is written, there is concessions in there stating if there is significant evidence that you could waive that particular, not necessarily waive, but you could just consider residential development closer to an industrial park if there was some mitigating factors put in place. In my opinion, the Taylor Business Park does have those built into it because of the existing residential that we have, obviously right next to the business park as it stands today. So County Council at that time had already kind of built some of those mechanisms into that particular industrial plan. And so they could transfer, and I could see that there would still be a business park across the canal, which would be less than 100 feet, or probably about 150 feet away. So, but given how we've done the uses, there could be some, council could consider that there's some merit to the residential component on this west side. So hope that answers your question.
It does, but it's considerably more than 150 feet
Sure.
anyway, so,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. And just a bit of a clarification on that particular topic. In larger urban areas, there always has to be a transition in between industrial and residential of some sort. At some point or another, residential will stop and commercial. So what I'm getting from what you were saying is that essentially we would have residential, we would have the canal, there is the green zone, and then it would be more light commercial.
Light industrial.
And then heavy industrial. So that actually sort of fits all into the transition from a residential to a heavy industrial area. There are those steps then. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, through the chair to Councilor Kurbis, that's kind of how planning essentially works, is we're trying to obviously mitigate those relationships between those two uses. And so some good planning in the past has allowed for us to do that in the future, so.
Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at the new map or the layout and knocking or changing it, pulling 2 or 3 lots out, it didn't really make a huge difference to the lot size. I still have a real concern about the water, providing water, and if you're having to put a dugout on each one of these properties and your septic systems. Just the intensity of the whole development in that area, it just doesn't, to me, doesn't suit, or doesn't fit into that area where the existing acreages are in that piece. But I still don't see, I mean, I'm not an expert in the field, but it doesn't, to me, putting a dugout in every one of these these lots is kind of questionable. I've lived it on our farm. We've had the same thing, and we have a cistern now of city water, but just with the issues around treating your own water and that sort of thing. But my issue right now is the lot size. The fact that coming back and just pulling 2 or 3 lots out of it hasn't made a huge difference to me in the size of it. It's basically putting a subdivision from the city into just plopping it right into this area. I just listening to the concerns of the landowners too. I appreciate some of that. I understand the value, the property owner. Absolutely, it's not from an agricultural standpoint, it's not farmable. Something needs to happen. This is the only way to go. So I would just, I would support, lots that are more appropriate for this site and that area. So at this point, I wouldn't support the structure plan that's being presented to us right now.
Any other comments from council? I would largely echo what Councillor Sayers said. I can't support this area structure plan as presented. I have similar concerns over the density. I mentioned that at the time of the public hearing. I still think that this is too dense for this area. I agree. I just think we're plunking in a very residential subdivision into a area that already has numerous conflicting uses, and the comments from the surrounding landowners were overwhelming in my opinion that they didn't support this. Having said that, I will acknowledge that we're always going to have these conflicts. There's always going to be an element of not in my backyard, and And I do take issue with some of that in the sense that I feel there are some that maybe don't acknowledge the fact that they are preventing others from having something similar to what they have. And I think we're trying to strike a balance, but group country residential has always been a challenge to me. The comments made around taxation and revenue from the county, we've looked into this. Our infrastructure director has looked into this at length, and the cost of developing, maintaining, and then when it's, developing, and then once it comes over to the county to keep up that infrastructure and keep it moving forward, it's a zero net gain. This isn't a money maker for the county in any way, shape, or form. This is a huge investment for a very targeted small amount of beneficial landowners as far as I'm concerned. So I can't support this, and if I were to support it, it would have to be at a level where it would be over-halved. It would have to come down to 10 or less lots in my mind to mirror what's already in the area. So I can't support it. Any other comments, questions? Sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah,
John and
I
then
was-
Morris.
My question was, the change in our requested lot size has brought this all over the 2 acres. So every lot that we have is now in conformance with our group country residential policies, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And second to that, in terms of the lot sizes of the acreages nearby, they are a little bit on the larger side, if I'm not mistaken, but not significantly, are they?
Let me just, we can just pull up the numbers here for you quickly. So, maybe not. It's not my layer, so I don't know how to use it all. Let's see if that one works.
The ones on the south there are about 3.5 acres. Except
Thanks,
the
Devin.
sliver one there is about 2.5. So the others are about 3.5 acres.
So they're all similar sized?
Yeah, the ones to the going north obviously get a little bit smaller to the north of this particular area. I think they kind of get a bit smaller based off of the canal area, but yeah, these ones are about, I would say 2.5 to 3.5 acres, and then obviously there's one larger one, but this one here is probably around 2 acres, the one that's across the canal. So they do fall in the range of kind of what's being proposed. I mean, obviously a little bit smaller, 2.5 acres is obviously a bit bigger than the 2.3 acres that they're proposing for the majority of the parcels there.
Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in somewhat on that line too, what you were saying, Honorable Reeve. The lot sizes, I would like to see them cut in, the lots twice as big. Then it may be something for us to look at, and it be maybe more acceptable for the people that were opposed to it down there, and the other one is, if we turn this whole thing down, what is it gonna do for us in the future for other developments coming up, That's just my statement.
Thanks, Morris. Lauren, and then John?
Thank you. So if you look at the ones to the south there, right along 508, there's one, it's empty there. It's just being built on now. And it's probably been, a good 20 years to take that to be built. So, the likelihood of this being built up to the standard of 60s, or the number of lots that are in is probably pretty damn slim, unfortunately. I could support this if the lots were, say, 3 acres, but I don't want to get them too big because they're too darn hard to look after, and people then don't look after it, and you got other problems. So at 3 acres, I could easily live with that.
Thanks, Lauren. John?
Well, that was exactly what I was going to ask in terms of, are we able to make an amendment on this to have the lot sizes a minimum of 3 acres without violating any of our policies or creating any unforeseen circumstances.
Thank you, Councillor Kirbis, through your chair. Yes, as mentioned, you can propose something like that. You can say that as to amend the plan to have all the lots be a minimum of 3 acres in size, or between a range of 3 and 5 acres in size, because there's that one corner that is a bit tricky in terms of lot sizing, obviously. But that doesn't conflict with any of the county's bylaws. So the MDP says you have to have a minimum of 2 acres for a residential lot. Same with the land use bylaw. So any proposal like that, would follow the policies that you already approved.
Go ahead, John, and then Mark.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just going to move that bylaw 23-002 Country Crossroads Estates area structure plan be read a second time with an amendment that the lot sizes be revised to a minimum of 3 acres.
And that the applicant would amend the plan accordingly.
And that the applicant would amend the plan accordingly. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Reeve Campbell. The other concern that I'd have is putting, with amendments, is that there's putting a time limit on this. I said, Councillor Hickey just mentioned that one lot's been sitting there for a number of years. And even when the developer was here, Martin Geomatics, they were speaking about they'd had interest in 4 lots, and if they're going to develop it in phases, so that this doesn't just become this construction site for eternity or a time frame. So if we have the ability to put those time constraints on it too, so that it doesn't just go on and on and on, because that's what makes this piece unique, is that it sits right in the middle of an area that an existing area. It's not in the middle of a farm with farmland all around it. It's got all these other properties around it. So from that standpoint, I have a real concern about that, because I wasn't getting the indication that they were going to develop the whole thing and they'd be putting lots in and it would be serviced and ready to go. It's just going to be as sold. So if they're only going to do a lot here, there. And from a financial standpoint, it doesn't make sense for them just to run in 5 lots and then wait until they sell them and then, service them. And then are they going to be, digging ditches or digging dugouts, or that to me still hasn't been addressed fully. So.
Thanks, Mark. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the next step is to do a subdivision, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to subdivide out the lots to begin the building process. So do you think that would be done in a staged scenario like what Mark has suggested? Because realistically, that's way too much land to put on the market at one time.
Right. So speaking to kind of the phasing of development, it would be a phased development that they wouldn't probably do all the lots at one time, just because you're right, the market probably can't bear that, and nor could the applicant probably bear the fronting of the cost for the infrastructure. So I would say that there would be a phased approach, probably in two phases, possibly 3, kind of going south, middle, and north, and then they would phase their road construction accordingly. The pond would probably be done right off the bat. That couldn't be phased. But that would be part of, when we're looking at these subdivisions, we have had a couple, just for council's knowledge, that have taken some time to develop out. Deer Run Estates up by Picture Butte was approved in 2010, and it's, I would say, 80% completed in terms of the lots being built there. There's still a few lots that are vacant, but that's typical for any country residential area. There's always less desirable lots and more desirable lots that go first. So when we look at stuff like this, it is looking at that 10 to 15-year horizon in terms of development. That is just a reality of kind of country residential development anywhere, unless you're next to a very large urban center that has a lot of, there's a lot of market for that. So when we look at these plans, we don't assume it'll happen in 2 years. We do assume that it's one phased, and 2, that it'll be.
At the door, Larry? Is there someone at the door? Sorry, Hillary.
No, that's okay.
Sorry, there's some people gathering in the lobby.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you. Sorry, Hillary.
No, that's okay. So yeah, probably the subdivision phased approach would be the best. And then they would phase their infrastructure accordingly. And like I said, we could anticipate this having like that 10 to 15 year for full build out. that's just part of, I mean, like Lauren said on the, Councillor Hickey said on the south side, there is still that one vacant lot that's just being built out now. So these areas do take some time. People, you have to have a specific buyer wanting them. And we have tried to address that in our municipal development plan and country residential land use strategy to have a market analysis done. It's just kind of difficult in a rural area to do that, to determine how fast something will pick up. The area to the north here developed out very quickly, conversely. Those lots sold and developed within a very short, relatively shorter period of time. So that's just kind of, we have one case where it's longer, one case it's shorter, but that's how we, from a planning perspective, we know that it's a long-term vision.
Thank you, Hillary. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. In terms of a build-out, to be clear, if it was a 10-year build-out, there wouldn't be constant construction over 10 years. There's really, even if it's a phased, looking at the way the area structure plan is set up right now, there would be really only 2 potential road builds there, one being the south and the other being the loop. So
Yeah.
I don't see this as being something that would be, 10 years worth of construction traffic on a constant basis. One year there may be 1 or 2 houses built, or, and maybe a year where there's none. So it would be a intermittent situation as opposed to a consistent equipment running up and down the road.
Thank you, John. I'll try and restate the motion. Please correct me if I'm wrong. John has moved that bylaw 23-002, the Country Crossroads Estate ASP, be read a second time as amended to include a 3-acre minimum parcel size, with the consultant submitting the final updated ASP as per the revised site plan. Maybe that captures. Does that work, Hillary?
Yes, yeah, I think the last part could be just taken out, just that there would be a 3-acre minimum and that the applicant would update the plan accordingly.
Okay. Does that work for you, Candace? Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Moving down, would we like to continue? John?
I'd like to move that bylaw 23-002, Country Crossroad Estates Area Structure Plan. Now, do we have to say it's amended now?
Nope, just third reading.
Be
Yep.
read a third time.
Thank you, John. John has moved that bylaw 23-002, the Country Crossroads Estate Area Structure Plan, be read a third time. Is there any discussion? Oh, sorry. I've got multiple hands. Jen, go ahead.
I just got a message from Canada that said these individuals are here regarding subdivision.
It's not a public hearing. They can come and sit in.
Yeah,
if they want to.
yeah.
They're more than welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. They said they were told 11, so.
There's no time on this particular item.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Lauren. Okay.
Sure.
Larry, same.
Okay,
Go ahead, Larry.
I guess one of us needs to speak, right? Councillor Hickey, do you want to go ahead? I just had. Oh, I'm sorry.
He was just opening the floor to you.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple questions, and it may be more directed to our planning experts in the room, but if council were to adopt the area structure plan bylaw as it's presented today, then it wouldn't come back to them, right? Council would not have a chance to see what that configuration or reconfiguration looks like?
No,
Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
So
Oh.
if council approves the bylaws as amended, as per directed, then it just would be the applicant would amend that plan, and that would be the plan. Yeah.
Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then I had one more question, again, probably directed to our planning experts, but if council adopts this and the applicant determines that the project is no longer feasible and the accompanying zoning bylaw occurs, what happens then? Because it's rezoned, is it not, right, to group country residential, but with no action taking? Is that a consequence that we are willing to have on the books?
If the area structure plan provides the framework and the zoning allows for it to be subdivided, there's really no consequence if they feel like they can't do it at this point in time, but the plan would still hold. It's like any other area structure plan.
Right, and the color of our map for that area would show it
Yeah.
as being group country residential for eternity unless it change down the line again,
There-
correct?
There's not, I mean, the 3-acre parcels shouldn't be a limiting factor, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, just a couple points of clarification. I thought we, at least for me and hopefully maybe some others, found value in those responses. Thank you, Hillary. Thank you,
Larry.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. Thank you, Hillary. You did make the motion, John?
I did, yes.
John has moved that bylaw 23-002, Country Crossroads Estate Area Structure Plan, be read a third time. Is there any further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Moving down. How would we like to proceed? John?
Yes, I'm doing all the heavy lifting here. Bylaw 20, I'd like to move the bylaw 23-003, land use bylaw amendment, rural agricultural to group country residential be read a second time.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation that bylaw 23-003, land use bylaw amendment, rural agriculture to group country residential, be read a second time. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. And for a third time? Lauren, go ahead.
I would move the bylaw 23-003, land use bylaw, rural agriculture to group country residential be read for the third time.
Thank you, Lauren. Lauren has moved that bylaw 23-003, land use bylaw amendment, rural agriculture to group country residential, be read a third time. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council.
We can move down now in our agendas to item G14, Alberta Advantage Immigration Program Opportunity for Lethbridge County, and this is a verbal update from administration.
No, I can do it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this next item is, Larry and I had the opportunity to meet with the town of Taber with regards to the Alberta Alberta Advantage Immigration Program. This is a provincial program that municipalities can be designated under to help with their businesses and to attract immigrants into their communities, rural communities. It's based off of a rural perspective. And we have received some feedback from some of our businesses in the county that this program would be ideal for the county as they can attract immigrants to this particular area to work in different types of industries. And so we went and met with the town of Taber and had a very good discussion with their economic development manager and also their CAO with regards to this program, as the town is a designated community, and asking them about the opportunity if the county could partner with them. The county on our own, we wouldn't be able to run this particular program. We do not have the resources available to run this program. It's quite intense in terms of the process. But the town has 8 months now, and they have met with some significant success in this program, and they have one staff member, full-time staff member working on it now, and they received a grant to have an additional staff member work on it. So they've found that this program is being very successful in and around the region around them. In addition, they also are partnered currently with the town of Vauxhall, the MD of Taber, the town of Coaldale, and the town of Picture Butte. So they are looking at this from a regional approach, a regional perspective, and so they seem quite delighted and excited that the county was interested in trying out this program with them. It kind of, instead of everybody having a program of their own, having a regional approach in this instance would probably make a lot more sense for everybody. So with that, the CAO and the Economic Development Manager, Amy, have proposed that the county could partner with the town, be part of their designation at no cost for the first month, just to see how it goes, to see how much traction there is with regards to county businesses. As you know, we have a lot of feedlots. This could apply to feedlots. This could apply to our larger businesses in the county, any new businesses. This can be like a selling, a marketing, economic development perspective that it seems to be quite popular. And the only thing that they required with regards to that is that they would like a letter of support coming under the Reeve signature, just stating that we would join this program. And then if it was successful after the first month or two, then we would enter into a more long-term agreement, which may have some financial implications, which we would bring back to council. But we thought this was a great kind of pilot opportunity for the county to help our industry, help our businesses attract and retain full-time permanent employees. Larry, did you want to add something?
I think you covered most of it, maybe just a tiny bit, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, definitely, the program is focused on assisting employers who are struggling with labor shortages. So this program is, I think in a nutshell, you could say a fast track to attract qualified and screened individuals, somewhat match them with industry needs. You know, the people in Tabor who are heading this project here in the south, they communicate directly with major employers, and smaller ones too for that matter, and then as well with individuals who might be interested in pursuing this program. There's no cost to either of them, and again, the intention is to help address some of those labor shortages, and it just seems like a kind of a very positive sort of win-win program all the way. It's I understand we were told it was funded somewhat by the federal government, but it's really being funded more so by the provincial government, and then given to the communities at the local government level, municipal level throughout the province who want to take advantage of this and try to help employers. So Hillary touched on it. I think it's a kind of a good fit and falls under our economic development umbrella. You know, if we're asked what does Lethbridge County do to try to promote economic development, this might just be, you know, one more feather in our cap in that we're part of this program. And we're doing what we can to assist large employers to acquire and maintain and retain the employees they need to be viable businesses and not have to, you know, cut hours and so on, things like that we've heard. There was one other point I was going to make on this, but I went on too long on the last point, so that one seems to have slipped my mind. So I think maybe for the moment that would be all I would add. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Hillary. Any questions from? Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is the administration looking for a motion from us to move forward with this, or direction?
Yes, so what we would, what we would like is to have a motion from council stating that a letter of support would be drafted under the Reeve signature and sent to the town of Tabor with regards to the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program.
Thanks, Hillary. Go, John.
I'd be happy to make such motion.
Thank you, John. Any further discussion?
No.
Nor am I. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? That's carried.
Thank you,
both for
Council.
that.
Thank you.
That's great.
Move down in our agenda. Item G2, administration. G2.1, land acknowledgement statement. And I believe, Klaus, you'll be speaking to this. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I got to thank Jen for putting this together so quickly before she actually took off for her holiday. And so, and the other committee members were Mark Sayers and Lauren Hickey that were also on the committee. So at the March 2nd, 2023 council meeting, a resolution was passed to have 3 members of council prepare a land acknowledgement for all council's consideration. On May 18th, 2023, the committee met and drafted an acknowledgement as indicated in the proposed resolution. In addition to the statement, the committee has provided some options for council's consideration of when and how the land acknowledgement is made, be it one, some, or all of the suggested options. So reason for the recommendation would be through the development of the proposed land acknowledgement statement, the committee considered statements from various organizations and drafted an acknowledgement they felt spoke to truth and reconciliation, the past, present, and future, and the area, and was representative of the county's overall philosophies. Some background information is in 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, established in 2008, released a report which included its recommendations of 94 calls to action in order to redress the legacy of residential schools and advantage of the truth and reconciliation process across the country. By implementing a land acknowledgement statement such as the one proposed, Lethbridge County shares in reconciliation by recognizing the history of the land the county sits on, while also highlighting its appreciation on what the land has and continues to offer to all. So some alternatives here. To not approve a land acknowledgement, the pros would be the county would remain status quo, and some of the cons would be that the land acknowledgement, while important, is only one piece of truth and reconciliation. However, by not implementing one, it may appear as though the county does not support its Indigenous neighbors and the community as a whole. Council could revise the land acknowledgements, and the pros would be that would still offer recognition of acknowledgement of the traditional lands of which Lethbridge County resides on, and the cons would be there would be no con to revising the proposed acknowledgement. Financial impact, as far as we could see, there's no financial impact with the proposed resolution. And with that all said, the committee recommended that County Council adopt the following land acknowledgement statement. In the truth of reconciliation, we acknowledge all those who call this land home now and for 1,000 of years in the past. May we respect each other and find understanding together and recognize the benefits that this land provides to us all. And that the land acknowledgement be read on the onset of the annual organizational meeting each year, or that it's going to be at the onset of every council meeting, or read at the onset of public events hosted by the Lethbridge County. That would probably also be council meetings, because that's also a public, basically public event is open to the public, and is also included on the county's correspondence, such as letterhead, email signature lines, and the county's website. So this is what we brought forward, and I wanted to turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Claus, and thank you, Lauren and Mark, as well, and obviously to Jen and staff that was part of this as well. Thank you. I would open it up to council for any discussion. Seeing none, how would you like to proceed? Claus, go ahead.
Then I would move that the County Council adopt the following land acknowledgement. In the truth of the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that all those who call this land home and now and for thousands of years in the past, may we respect each other and find understanding together and recognize the benefits of this land that this land provides to us all. I would like, maybe we should just recommend this one first and then go to when and how often we want to do it.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion anyway, if my committee members agree with that.
Are we happy with just tackling the acknowledgement statement first? Okay, so Claus has moved the recommendation to adopt the land acknowledgement statement. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. And as far as the use of the statement, how would we like to see that? John, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to move that the land acknowledgement be read at the following times. At the onset of the annual organizational meeting each year, at the onset of every council meeting, at the onset of public events hosted by Lethbridge County, and is also included on the county correspondence such as letterhead, email signature lines, and the county's website.
Thank you, John. Any further discussion? If not, I will call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Again, thank you very much to the committee for your work on that, and thank you to staff. We can move down now in our agenda. How are we doing for a break? Is everyone okay if we keep rolling? Or? Okay. We'll move down then in our agenda. G3, infrastructure. G3.1, Rave Industrial Park infrastructure upgrades, tender results. And with us, we have our Director of Infrastructure, Mr. Devin Teely. Morning, Devin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Council. That's the wrong mouse. Sorry. Okay, so the Rave Industrial Park Infrastructure Upgrades project was tendered recently and closed with a total of 2 contractors submitting a bid. The bids received were significantly higher than the original engineering estimate in which I based my budget on. The following prices were received. McNally Contractors with a bid of $5,550,234.81, and Tollstrip Construction with $7,933,597.30. The 2023 budget amount for this project was $3.6 million, which I just mentioned was based on the engineer's estimate that was provided in the fall of 2022. Through discussions with the engineer, who is WSP, and the low bidder, which is McNally, we were able to find some cost savings in the amount of about $540,000, which modified McNally's total bid to $5,010,143.05. This modified price plus engineering and third-party costs total $5,225,143.05, which leaves a funding deficit of $1,625,143.05. In April of 2023, so April of this year, the county was notified that the Park Lake project received about $1.37 million in STIP funding, or Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Program funding, which will help offset the project costs. This project was proposed to be solely funded through the Market Access Network Reserve, but with the approval of the STIP grant, we can apply these funds saved to other projects and allocate MSI funds to this project. I do have a table included which outlines the original funding sources and the amounts included in the budget. So the federal gas tax fund, we had $2 million in the budget. We're not proposing to increase that at all. MSI, we had $540,000. We're proposing to increase that to $1.825 million for a difference of $1,285,000. And then the Public Works Project Reserve, we originally had $1,060,000 allocated, and now we're looking for $1,400,143.05 for a difference of $340,143.05. So as you can see, the totals on the bottom there, as I mentioned, the budget was $3.6 million. We're looking at about $5,225,000, which leaves us a deficit of $1,625,000 and change. So some background information. I did have several meetings with WSP to determine the most cost-effective way to move forward, including deferral of the project. It was WSP's opinion that we would not secure better pricing by delaying this project to a future year. The largest financial component, about 73%, is the underground work, which includes water lines, storm sewer, and sanitary pipe installations. As you know, we've seen drastic price escalations in pipeline material in the past few years, and these price increases are affecting this project. My recommendation before you today is that Council approves an additional $1,285,000 from the Municipal Sustainability Initiative and an additional $340,143.05 from the Public Works Project Reserve for a total budget of $5,225,143.05. Some alternatives, or an alternative, is we could delay the project to a future year or cancel the project out entirely. The pro to that would be short-term expenditures for the project would be minimized. But the con is the project should eventually be completed, and delaying would likely increase costs in future years. As I mentioned earlier, WSP's recommendation was the same. And there has been a lot of meetings and communications with the landowners in that park, and agreements put in place, and that would essentially need to happen again if we were to delay this project. The financial impact, as I mentioned before, $1,285,000 from MSI, and a little bit more than $340,000 from the Public Works Project Reserve. And with that, I will put it back to Council for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Devin. Before I go to questions, would you just be able to refresh council's memory on how contingency works? Say we get into this project and for some unforeseen reasons, costs are elevated. How does that work?
We do carry a contingency on all of our projects. That's included in the budget. I would have to look on this one to see exactly what the contingent, oh yeah, 345,000. That is in case they get into the project and there's something unforeseen that they come across. They come across a bunch of saturated material, they have to haul away and import more material. Things like that is what we have contingencies for. I'm very much a believer in contingencies because you never know what you're gonna dig up and find. And to shut the project down because we run out of money is just gonna incur more costs because the contractor is gonna be then putting in delay claims. So a contingency, although it seems like a lot of money on this size of a project, could get eaten up pretty quickly. I don't foresee that, but I wouldn't want to reduce that in any manner either.
Thank you, Devin. Sorry, I'll open it back up to council. I got Mark, Claus, and Lauren. Go ahead, Mark.
Just a quick question, Devin. So WSP came up with a quote in the fall of last year, and then within 6 months, we're all of a sudden in a $1.6 million deficit on it. So what was the, like, what was their, was it the materials that jumped, or they just misread the, I just having a hard time. Like, I could see over a year on a big project, but for it to jump within a short period of time.
Mm-hmm. There was a couple things. The $540,000 that we were able to save, discussions with the supplier and the contractor took place, and they were able to bring that price down. But I also think that in some of the bid items, they were just underestimated by the consultant, and that's why the price came in a lot higher than it was budgeted for.
Claus, and then Lauren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, with this project, when do you think you would start with it, and when do you think the project would be completed?
It's scheduled to be completed by the end of October of this year, and pending council approval today, the contractor would probably be getting in there within the next few weeks because he's got about 68 days of site occupancy bid, and to get it done this year, they would have to probably start up fairly shortly, pending approval from council.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So how will this work with the businesses that are there? Some of them only have one way in. Like, how are they still able to function? Or how like, this is kind of an inconvenience, so I'm just, especially on the east side there's just no other way to get in.
Yeah, that's correct. It will be a bit of an inconvenience. Now, they do have to, the contractor has to submit a traffic accommodation strategy to ensure that they can accommodate any traffic that comes in and out of there. But they'll also talk to individual landowners. Let's say they have to dig a trench in front of their access and it'll be inaccessible for 4 hours. They'll work with that landowner and say, okay, when do you need to come in and out? When's a good time for us to do that? And then they'll go in, do the work, and minimize that disruption. The good thing is it's a looped road system in the industrial park, so there is options to go in and out either way. But the contractor will have to work with the business owners and submit a traffic accommodation strategy that shows they can accommodate the traffic during construction.
Any other questions?
Well, you have a comment, if I may. It's, we looked at that rave industrial lots down there quite a few years ago, and it was somewhat, disgusting what we saw down there. So I'm pretty tickled to see that we might be able to, and hopefully we can go ahead with this.
Thanks, Morris. How would you like to proceed? Claus?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that council approves an additional $1,285,000 from the Municipal Sustainability Initiative and an additional $340,143.05 from the Public Works Project Reserve for a total budget of $5,225,143.05.
Thank you, Claus. Any discussion? Claus has moved the recommendation that council approves an additional $1,285,000 from the Municipal Sustainability Initiative and an additional $340,143.05 from the Public Works Project Reserve for a total budget of $5,225,143.05. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Devin. And
Thank you.
just want to acknowledge the importance of receiving not only MSI and its future iteration in LGFF, but also programs like STIP. I know we apply to STIP regularly, and unfortunately we're not always successful, but when we are, it's obviously a huge benefit to the municipality and gives us that flexibility and that opportunity to, as Morris alluded to improve infrastructure and make things better in our community. So thank you to the province for that funding, but also like to stress the importance of it moving forward, and obviously would always encourage the government to look at increasing that funding, but also just its importance. So with that, thank you. And with that, we can move down to G3.2, the local improvement tax counter petitions. And I believe Devin, our Director of Infrastructure, Devin Teely, is also tackling that one. So I throw to you, Devin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very brief report I have for you this morning. At the April 6th, 2023 council meeting, administration presented 2 local improvement plans based on 2 petitions received for the following. Petition 1 was for the paving of Township Road 8-2. Petition 2, paving of Range Road 21-5 and Valley View Place. After this meeting, administration distributed the local improvement plans to the benefiting landowners. Since then, multiple counter petitions have been received in which administration reviewed and determined to be sufficient. Some background information: administration is presenting this to council for information, and through, I guess, the CAO formally declaring the counter petition sufficient as required by the Municipal Government Act. And the recommendation is basically no decision or action is required by council, and this report is for informational purposes only, and that is because it is required by the Municipal Government Act. If a valid counter petition is submitted to the county must not proceed with the local improvement.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you for providing that information. Are there any questions of Devin? Larry, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And yeah, I think it may have been stated, and I may have missed it, I apologize, but the counter petition came when the plan was developed. It simply, the cost of doing the projects exceeded, I think, expectations, or what was anticipated by the landowners, and that's the reason they've chosen to back out. And having said that as well, and Devin alluded to it, but just to make it official for the record, in my role as interim CAO, I hereby declare that the counter petitions for the paving of Township Road 8-2 and Range Road 21-5 and Valley View Place are sufficient. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Any other questions from council? Not? Thank you very much for that, Devin.
Thank you, council.
Moving down, G4, Public Operations. G4.1, the 2023 Calgary Stampede BMO Farm Family Awards. With that, we have our Director of Public Operations, Mr. Jeremy Wixon. Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning, Council. Thank you. So today I'm here to present a couple different items. The first one is the 2023 Calgary Stampede BMO Farm Family Awards. Previously, Council had, this is basically to support agriculture and farm families in our municipality by participating in this event at the Calgary Stampede that celebrates the values of Western heritage and generational farms. Historically, the councillor of the division in which the nominee resides is selected with a guest of their choice to join the nominees in the day's activities. 2 spots are available and no extra tickets will be granted through this invitation. I know this has become a question just about every year, but the Stampede is very restricted on the number of seats they provide, so there will only be 2 spots available for a councillor and a guest. So this year's award winner representing Lethbridge County is the Nickel family, which operates out of the dairy farm, in Electoral Division 4. Just more background information on this. Annually, Lethbridge County's Ag Service Board nominates an outstanding farm family to be awarded the Bank of Montreal Farm Family Award during the Calgary Stampede. The nominees will be hosted at a recognition program during the 2023 Calgary Stampede. As special guests, they will enjoy a day-long itinerary of Stampede events, including brunch and tickets to the rodeo. A request is also sent out to Lethbridge County to send representation, which is hence why we're here discussing who the attendees will be on behalf of Lethbridge County. Some alternatives that could be there that we do not send a representation to this event. This would not be the recommendation, as most Southern Alberta's municipalities do support this initiative, and this is something that the Ag Service Board deliberates on every year, and we definitely take our time in the selection process for these families. As far as the financial impact, a council representative would be approved for attendance and related expenses, so there would be the typical incurred expenses for out-of-town event. And my recommendation for today is that County Council select one member of council and their guest of their choice to represent Lethbridge County at the 2023 BMO Farm Family Awards presentation scheduled for July 10th, 2023.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any discussion from council? How would you like to proceed? I was fortunate to attend last year with the Van den Nelson family. It's a lovely event. Get to learn a lot and hear a lot of cool stories from the families that are selected throughout Southern Alberta. And it was just really nice to be there and celebrate with the family. So how would you like to proceed? Plus?
Well, since it's in District 4 that the Nickel family is in, I would suggest that Councillor Kurbis attend.
You agreeable to that, John?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, the clause is moved that County Council select Deputy Reeve John Kurbis and a guest to represent Lethbridge County at the 2023 BMO Farm Family Awards presentation scheduled for July 10th, 2023. Happy with that clause? Okay. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And your second item, Jeremy, G4.2, the 2024 capital equipment purchasing.
Thank you. Thank you for the nominee there. So annually, council approves the 5-year capital plans as per the MGA, which requires an approved 5-year capital plan and a 3-year operating budget. So today, I'm presenting the 2024 capital equipment, as well as previously we had adopted the 2023 to 27 5-year capital plan. All purchases for the replacement of existing equipment would be for the 2024 calendar year, so that's very specific. These would be ordered at this time, and then they would not be accepted until 2024. And these will all then fall under the 2024 capital equipment expenditures list. As delays in the delivery of equipment have been a challenge in both 2022 and 2023, similar challenges exist in the delivery timeline for 2024 due to ongoing pandemic, post-trauma, and global supply chains. In ordering equipment earlier in 2023 for delivery in 2024, the intention is to have more equipment delivered for early spring work when more intensive levels of service are required. The reasons for the recommendations, as much as COVID seems like it is in the rearview mirror, the global pandemic did cause significant delays in the delivery and supply of equipment necessary for county operations and service level provision. Due to these extensive delays in delivery of ordered machinery and equipment, if approved later in the calendar year, there will be delays in equipment delivery for spring 2024. So I would anticipate, and I've heard from the majority of equipment dealers, that we're seeing anywhere from 9 to 12 months on the majority of stuff. There are some that are arriving sooner as more supplies become available, but we are seeing some significant delays. And when I say 9 to 12 months, that is for lots of our very basic equipment. If we get into anything specialty-wise, like we do have some specialty equipment, those delays could be even significantly longer. With that, so previously council had approved the 5-year 2023 to 2027 capital equipment list in the fall during the budget deliberations for 2023. The capital equipment that was purchased faced several lengthy delays that we had in the last couple of years due to the supply chain problems. The equipment purchased for operations is required in meeting our ongoing levels of service requirements. The capital equipment proposed is for core services such as road maintenance, construction, weed spraying, and snow plowing, as well as general transportation for staff. Equipment life cycles are considered as part of the equipment purchasing. Optimal purchasing has equipment landed in the spring for operations, and disposals can be cycled to auction or sold accordingly when the demand is the highest. And typically we did very well in our auction prices for heavy equipment, because we did have equipment that was delivered slightly earlier this year, so we were able to put our machines out there for bid. From past typical purchasing years prior to the pandemic, the turnaround equipment has been 3 to 6 months, but like I said, we've seen significant changes in what that turnover rate is, and we are seeing more of the 8 to 12, or I think I said 9 to 12 months. Some alternatives potentially, if purchases are delayed for approval until later in the 2023 calendar year, delivery equipment will be delayed and may impact the operating budget. As we push equipment further back, there is a potential that we do life cycle a lot of this equipment, so the hope is that we dispose of equipment as well at an optimal time, so we get an optimal price, and we're not further into equipment repairs. There is, as far as the financial impact, I do have the list of equipment up here. The budget request portion that is estimated is at $3.595 million, with the fleet equipment replacement reserve of $2.267 and an estimated proceeds on sale of equipment for all those items that will be essentially cycled out of $1.328. Now, some of those, there is one new one, which is the crack sealant trailer, which would be something that would obviously have to be forecasted well into the future as far as a replacement. So before I make my recommendation, I'll open the floor for questions in regards to this list here that's proposed today. Now, I do have on this spreadsheet here, I do have 2024 all the way through 2028, as well as I have a 10-year forecast for equipment. And this includes all machinery and equipment for the whole municipality, Public Works, Ag Service Board, utilities, and administration vehicles, and emergency services and CPO. Now, when I say emergency services, that is only specifically to the fire services coordinator. That does not include any other equipment outside of that.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'd open it up to council. Any questions for Jeremy? Go ahead, Klaus.
Well, I think this is probably the thing that is delayed year after year, so I think it's not more than fair that we give the okay to this one here. So I would like to recommend that council approve the 2024 capital equipment list for purchasing requirements.
Thank you, Klaus. Any discussion? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just one, and that's the SUV. Is that utilized to any full extent? Like, is it a valuable piece? Like, it just seems like never gets used. Yeah.
So that vehicle, I have it scheduled, it's part of our enterprise fleet program, so I've got it scheduled for being cycled every year. Now, the reason why I have it in there for every year is just for when it might actually be cycled. Because of the kilometers on it, it's probably only looking at probably a 2 to 3 year cycle time, but I can't say whether or not that 2 years will optimally be this year, or whether it'll be next year or the year potentially following. And that is mostly due to the low kilometers. There's a minimum portion as part of the enterprise program. You have to have a minimum of 15,000 kilometers on Ford products before they will allow it to essentially enter into their resale market.
Go ahead, Klaus.
With that said, Lauren, question, and I wasn't present with all the hiring, but was there anything promised that we would have a vehicle included?
Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just kind of a timely matter to Councillor Hickey's question about the use of the Ford Explorer. I think that's the vehicle we're referring to. And, I would suggest to this point it's probably been somewhat underutilized. It is there and available for, councillors to attend the odd conference and so on here and there. And just this very morning, I sent out an email to our senior staff and those involved that We're going to make better use of the vehicle so that it's, being utilized to its full extent, essentially. We're going to provide it to our two human resources personnel who travel out to Picture Butte between themselves, typically, most weeks, 3 times, so there and back. So rather than, paying mileage or have them go another route or tie up one of the other vehicles, we're going to have them use that vehicle for that purpose when it's available. We would give priority if council needs it for an upcoming conference or something. They can make some adjustments, but we're planning to sort of up the use of that because, again, to Councillor Hickey's kind of question, I think arguably, it should be utilized. It's there, and the county has it in its fleet. Let's use it. So that's what we're planning to do moving forward, and we should see a lot more use out of that vehicle in the very near future here, starting tomorrow, technically. Thank you.
Larry.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Claus has moved the recommendation that council approve the 2024 capital equipment list for purchasing requirements. Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Jeremy.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Council.
Moving down, G5, Finance and Administration, G5.1, Water Pipeline Purchase Borrowing Bylaw 23-016. And with us we have our Director of Finance and Administration, Jennifer Place. Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. County Council gave first reading to borrowing bylaw 23.6 or 23-016 on May 4th in the amount of $6 million. Since first reading of the borrowing bylaw, it has been advertised for 2 consecutive weeks, and the 15-day petition period has passed as per the Municipal Government Act. Therefore, Council can now move forward with second and third reading of the bylaw. The following recommendation to move forward with the readings does align with Council passing first reading, as mentioned, and is required under the Municipal Government Act and in order for a municipality to borrow funds. Just a little bit of background again. On March 13th, 2023, McCain Foods announced that they would be implementing a $600 million expansion to their facility, which is located within Lethbridge County, to be operational by January 1 of 2025, which will double the size of their existing plant and create approximately 260 jobs. As this is new and exciting, it generates economic growth for the county. The expansion will require some investment from the county itself for the installment of an 18,300 meter water pipeline between Coaldale and the McCain's plant. So pursuant to the sections of the Municipal Government Act, a municipality may only make a borrowing if the borrowing is authorized through a borrowing bylaw. So upon approval of second and third reading, there is still another 30-day petition period before the borrowing bylaw and application can be submitted to a financial institution or the province for those funds. County Council could decide not to pass second and third reading. If this is the case, the pro would be that there would be no impact to the county debt limits or requirements to pay debt on any, and may indicate to the province that the project cannot proceed without grant funding. The con would be that funds could not be borrowed, and the county would have to find another source of funding if they were to proceed with the waterline project. And this could also impact McCain's timelines, and the county would not be fulfilling an obligation to their agreement with McCain. So borrowing for this project will obviously have an impact on the county's available debt capacity and could limit future borrowing needs or requirements. Additionally, borrowing payments must be funded. Therefore, the county will need to ensure that there is sufficient tax revenue levied to fund the annual principal and interest payments without creating future cash flow issues and also not negatively affecting current levels of service. I did update the debt limits in this report based on the 2022 approved financial year-end statements, just to show you where the county is sitting with the unused debts. So that $6 million that we're looking to borrow through this bylaw would obviously reduce the unused debt limit and reduce the amount of serviceable.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions from council? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if you go ahead and borrow the money, and then all of a sudden the government comes to the table with some money, are we still on the hook for that first money, or can we, like, once you start a project, are you still eligible for other funds?
Assuming with the project being more than the amount that we're borrowing,
Yes.
then yes, we would be eligible for other funds. If you're asking if we could pay this debt with loan, or sorry, with grant funds?
You got the first one, that was what I was asking.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, secondly, I would move second reading of bylaw number 23-016.
Thank you, Lauren. Lauren has moved the second reading of bylaw 23-016. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And third reading. Mark.
I'd move that water pipeline purchase borrowing bylaw number 23-016 be read a third time.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved third reading of the water pipeline purchase borrowing bylaw number 23-016. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
We have some correspondence now. Correspondence. First one, Coaldale, Town of Coaldale 2023 Summerfest and Candy Parade Invitation. Town of Coaldale has been working over the last several years to make some changes to their summer celebration, and they've settled on their Summerfest and Candy Parade on Saturday, August 12th, with a theme of Salute to Agriculture 2023. Outlines a couple ways that we can participate. Mayor or council representatives have an opportunity riding in style. You can be supplied with a VIP transportation if required. Also, there's an opportunity to enter a float to promote your community. We have traditionally participated in the Coaldale Parade in the past. I believe, is there a conflict now with Nobleford, perhaps? Yeah. Okay. 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 So Candace, I'm sure you could fire out some invites for that, but as long as staff is looking, administration is going to cover, like you said, that float element. That's terrific. But Candace will have invites out to council. Moving down, MP Thomas, Community Builders Awards. We received correspondence from MP Thomas, once again calling for nominations for her Community Builder Awards. Residents of the Lethbridge constituency are invited to nominate anyone who goes above and beyond to make a positive difference in our community. In the past, this included community volunteers, farmers, foster parents, educators, artists, athletes, social workers, coaches, entrepreneurs, emergency responders, and many others who go the extra mile to invest in the lives of others and make our community great. If you have someone in mind you'd like to nominate, please look into the process, and the deadline for that is Friday, June 16th. As well, I believe the county has promoted this through their various media channels. Moving down, STARS donation. This is a thank you from STARS, just acknowledging that during the budget process in 2022, County Council did make the decision to contribute a contribution to STARS. This is their thank you for that. With your $20,240 donation, STARS is able to provide life-saving critical care anywhere on the ground, in the air, and virtually. Today I've recovered. Oh, there was a preceding letter from a survivor that was aided by STARS. We're also grateful to STARS. He is here today because of allies like you. Thank you. Moving down, item 4, Ukrainian Day celebration invitation. To your mayor and esteemed council members, I am writing to extend a warm invitation to you and the entire council to join us for the annual Ukrainian Day celebration organized by the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, Alberta Provincial Council, UCC-APC. This highly anticipated event will take place on Sunday, August 20th at the picturesque Ukrainian Cultural Heritage Village. You have the details before you there. Yeah. Are there any items from the correspondence that council would like pulled out and have any further discussion on? If not, we can continue on in our agenda. With that, we are now at our closed session. Item I, we have 4 items before us. Item 1, economic development opportunity, FOIP Section 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of a third party. Item 2, administration, meeting with Blood Tribe, FOIP Section 21, disclosure harmful to intergovernmental relations. Item 3, land request, FOIP Section 21, disclosure harmful to intergovernmental relations. And item 4, Chief Administrative Officer appointment, FOIP Section 19, confidential evaluations. Lauren?
I would move that we enter into closed session.
Thank you. Lauren has moved that we enter a closed session at 11:46 a.m. this morning. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. resume our public meeting at 12:20 this afternoon. Coming out of our closed session, we have a couple of motions. On item 3, land request. Claus?
I'll move that the county council authorize the sale of the property within the Lethbridge County to the city of Lethbridge and send a letter to the city under the Reeves signature.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved the recommendation that county council authorize the sale of the property within Lethbridge County to the city of Lethbridge and send a letter to the city under the Reeves signature. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And item 4. Tie again. I'll give that one to you, John.
I'd like to move that Cole Beck be appointed to the position of Chief Administrative Officer for Lethbridge County, effective June 12th, 2023.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation that Cole Beck be appointed to the position of Chief Administrative Officer for Lethbridge County, effective June 12th, 2023. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. If there's nothing further, I just want to say a quick thank you. Thank you to Larry and everybody. Again, I know I've said this 100 times now, but I'll say it again. This will, the next meeting, as per the previous motion, Cole will be here acting as our new CAO. So I just want to acknowledge Larry and everybody else in SLT who stepped up during this time. It was seamless, and thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. And with that, Lauren.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Lauren. Lauren has motioned to adjourn at 12:22 this afternoon. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.